I am excited to welcome today a very special guest. And as you guys know, I protect my community. I protect you guys really well, almost 2,000 of you. And I only want to share with you the best of the best career experts and communication experts out there so that you really know that you can trust the information. Today, I have a really impressive gentleman that I have worked with in the past. He is an executive speaking coach, and he's had a very successful career in himself. And so I'd like to introduce David Goad.
Hey, Mike Tomasello. How you doing, man? It's great to be here.
I'm doing amazing. Was there any part of your background or anything that you wanted to make sure that the audience understood about you before we got started?
Real quickie, because I've known you since we both worked at WebEx, and we worked at WebEx before Cisco acquired the company. So we're going way back to like 2007-ish. And at that time, it was really the first time I had been immersed into an online meeting culture. That's been like over 15 years ago. So you and I have both been in it to win it for a long time in the online space. And then here this year, finally, around February, the whole world was forced to go on camera. And suddenly trying to catch up to everything I've been doing for a long time. And I had already really positioned myself as a coach to help not just with people speaking on stage, but with speaking on camera. It's a different skill set, different mindset. And so that's one of the specialties I sort of throw out there. I've been a talk show host. I've directed. I've been on camera, behind the camera. So just throwing that out there. We'll be talking a lot about that, the on-camera world today as we talk about confidence.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because that's definitely why I wanted to bring you on, because you're not just an expert on one area of communication. You are really an expert on a variety of different areas of communication. And so you have years, and I'm not going to date you, but you have years and years, countless years of experience in this new web environment, in this new Zoom environment that other people don't have. You know, you've coached people professionally around it, been in front of the camera, behind the camera. So super excited to jump into it with you and talking about confidence. And so first of all, sometimes before you can solve a problem, you have to understand the problem and what's going on. And so a lot of people have their confidence shaken right now. What do you think's there's probably a lot of answers to this. What are a number of the different answers that are causing people to have their confidence shaken right now?
Wow, it's a broad topic. Let me see if I can break it down just from my perspective. Whether you're in a job now, just left the job for some reason, or you've been looking for a while, there is a lot of things affecting people's confidence right now. We obviously know the pandemic has forced this shift in behavior, and organizations are doing a great job of leading, and some are just making stuff up and trying to survive. And leadership is challenged. It's just a challenging environment. And I think I want to acknowledge first the people who still have a job, because there's a sense of anxiety and concern about, am I going to keep my job? Am I going to get laid off? Is there going to be some kind of organizational change? And in the midst of that worry, everyone got forced to go home. Now, for me, like I said, I've been at this for a long time. I have a little studio. I got my fancy lights. Everything's cool. Some people are like fighting for the kitchen table to have a place to work, with kids running around and dogs and no interruptions, and the lawnmower goes by, and it's a chaotic environment at home and hard to carve out a space. The funny thing, Mike, I teach workshops, and I've had executives showing up in all these different scenarios. I've had people in garages. People show up for the training behind a steering wheel. And I was like, hey, you might be more comfortable. We're going to do some body language stuff, and you might be more comfortable inside. He said, dude, this is the only quiet place I could find. So people are challenged with that. And so there's more distraction, disruption, just to add to that anxiety for people who are currently working. Then you have those who are just laid off, right? Either reduction in hours, furlough, layoff, whatever you want to call it. Things just shrunk down, and now you're in that state. And I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the third part is people have been looking for a while. Maybe even I have one friend who almost, like, she was a finalist for the job, and then brakes go on. Sorry, we're slowing everything down. Thank you for doing those 8 online interviews, but we're not hiring anybody now. And so there's different levels of things that can shake your confidence, and people, I think, because they respond to it with personalizing it versus looking at the opportunities in the midst of that. So that's kind of the way. Would you agree with that? Anything else I missed that you think is confidence shaking now?
Yeah, I think in terms of confidence shaking, that you sort of got the main core categories, and one of the takeaways that I'm getting with this conversation is there might actually be 83,137 like different things that are shaking your confidence right now, and it's all okay. Whether it be your specific situation due to COVID, whether you're single at home, whether you're surrounded by 23 people at home. There's still the normal stressors and things going on in life and career that are shaking a lot of us. Now, me, I am a problem solver. So how do you recommend our listeners or watchers, how do you recommend that they overcome their confidence being shaken in those 3 core categories?
Woo! All right, here we go. The first one is for people who are still working, right? You're still in a job, but all this stuff is swirling around. You're worrying about the next reorg or what's going to happen. Is there's a lot of change going on. And what I found in my long career is whenever there's a lot of change, there's a lot of defeat, there's a lot of negative, there's a lot of worry, but there's opportunity because there's movement. Movement always creates openings. Even that friend you thought who would never leave that job suddenly decide, I've had enough of this. And they're gone. Somebody else moves into their position, and there's an opening for you to move into that one. It's like the chess pieces start moving around more. Therefore, there's more plays available to you if you want to be a player. So that's just a different perspective shift, is to start looking at things you always thought and took for granted as, maybe that company is going to be hiring now because they just lost 4 good people because they got their salaries reduced, and I'm willing to work for a little bit less than they were. Right? Opportunity, right? You have to kind of throw away your assumptions, throw away what used to be, and just look at things through fresh eyes. That would be my first advice for how you look at change.
So before you go on to the second one, I just want to summarize and paraphrase it and see if I got some of the magic and gold nuggets that you just shared, or goad nuggets, maybe I should say. So if you are currently working and you're stressed out because, hey, am I potentially going to get laid off? Am I potentially going to have my salary reduced? Am I furloughed? It's a time of opportunity. What can I do? Where can I search out the opportunity to add more value to the organization, potentially move into even better position? Can I use this? Can I take on additional responsibilities and use it as an opportunity to negotiate a salary increase? A lot of things, and taking those actions to take control of it will build your confidence back up. Did I get most of that right?
Exactly. Looking through that lens of how can I help, even if you don't get paid for it right away, right? This is something that I'd done back in the days when you and I were at WebEx, then Cisco. I used to volunteer for task forces, tiger teams, they call them, right? Say, hey, we have a cross-functional team to solve this special problem that's outside your regular duties, but we want people from all different departments to be on this team, and then report back 30 days to the leader, whatever the problem was. I volunteered for 3 of those. All 3 ended up in relationships with people who referred me to opportunities later. All 3 of them. One of them to the best job I ever had, which was when I was a talk show host at Cisco on a regular show called Launchcast. It was like a night show for product launches. And that role came from a recommendation by somebody else I had helped 3 years prior. Just, hey, David, I remember you always wanted to do more hosting stuff. There's this opportunity. It's not really posted yet. I want to give you a first shot at it. But it's because I built a relationship by just helping and giving.
Yeah, and that is so huge. And I want to piggyback off of that. I just I just got off of another interview a couple, probably about 30 minutes ago. And we were talking about the concept about volunteering for responsibilities to round out your resume and make your resume look even more impressive. And even though that's a strategy for people that are currently employed, I just want to offer that even if you're unemployed, you could be proactively seeking out organizations, contacting friends, contacting entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and volunteering for projects as well, and really building out your skill set. And it's immediately going to improve your credibility and the value that you provide to an organization. So I'm so glad you brought that one up.
Yeah, that's great, man. I'm glad you're bringing that perspective to your audience, your viewers here, and giving them resources to work through that, because it's not easy. It's definitely, all these things are easier said than done, right? You mean you want me to volunteer some time thing when I'm not making my quota and I don't know if I'm going to pay my rent? It's like, well, yeah, we're asking you to take a look at it and look at the longer term benefits. Everything comes from relationships. Everything. Even whether you get referred to a job opportunity by a friend that trusts you, and they have a leader that trusts them, and it just shortens that trust building phase so much. It pays off eventually. Just having that kind of a servant attitude, I'm going to help, or I'm going to do self-development during this time, because I know I'm not going to make my quota. I'm still going through all the motions, but I'm going to build relationship with my customers. I'm just going to call them up. See, how you doing in the pandemic? How can I help?
Yeah. Right? I feel like we could have a 3-hour interview on just that one topic alone. So I might have to bring you back sooner rather than later. And for those of you that are watching, I encourage you to drop in your comments if you have a burning question, an interesting question around something that we're talking about. Drop it in the comments, because if it's important enough to you, it's important enough to us, and we're gonna try to find a way to tackle it. Yep. But in the meantime, let's move on to the other category. So what's the second category?
Yeah,
and,
people just recently
and how do they
off.
overcome it? What's that?
Sorry, I thought you took a pause there. Yeah, the people who have just been laid off or been reduced, furloughed, what have you. And this is the super confidence shaker, because most people personalize it, especially the first time it happens. Now, I am the proud badge wearer of being laid off, not one, not two, but 3 times. That's right, folks. If you work in the technology industry, especially Silicon Valley, it's going to happen eventually, and it's not necessarily tied to your performance. Every time I was involved in a reduction in force, there's a nice euphemism, every time I was kicked out, they praised me all the way out. David, we love what you're doing. However, resources, funding, organization, blah, 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 blah. And it did shake my confidence the first time, because I'm like, wow, it's happened to me. It must have been something I did. And it's kind of like a little kid when your parents are arguing and somehow you make it your fault, right? It's like, it's one of those, like, it's just not right, but you can't help it. And because those 3 times I got laid off, they shook my confidence, but I came back stronger every time too. Each one was the kick in the pants I needed at that time to go looking, find something even better. And I'm also proud to say, each time resulted in at least a 20% increase in pay at a better company where the culture was more suited to me. It's like I just kept evolving and getting better, but I had to be kicked out, to do that. And this at this time, this is the bright side. I told you I'd find you some silver linings today. Because layoffs are so prevalent, think about it this way. There's not as much stigma attached to it right now. When the boss asks you, tell me your story, they're looking for the gaps in your resume, and well, how'd you get from this and this one? Why did you move to this one? They're looking for reasons to disqualify you, right? It's like, well, what's the story there? Did you get along with management well? If you just say, yeah, I got reduced because of the pandemic, they'd be like, oh, okay, next. It's not going to hurt you as much. So in this time, take advantage of that story. Like, go searching for something better. Be bold in your ask. look for something even better. Maybe if you're honest with yourself, yeah, there's stuff you have. If you've been around too long and don't really like the manager you got now, take the kick in the pants and go searching for it. That's my advice on that second for the layoff folks is don't wallow in pity for a minute. You immediately, don't look for blame. Don't look for reasons why. Don't personalize it. Just immediately start your campaign for what's next. Because any minute thinking about what happened before is a wasted minute. They're not going to take you back. Typically, you don't get brought. Now, furlough is a different deal. I know people that just got furloughed for 3 months. Now they've been invited back to work. That's different. But when you go through a layoff, move on and move on quickly.
Very, very good advice. Lots of gold nuggets, lots of gold nuggets in that. And so to sort of put my paraphrasing on it to make sure I don't miss anything, because then the expert David can let me know if we missed anything here. So we're talking about those of you that might have just been laid off or might have just been furloughed and you're afraid of being laid off soon. However you define that as recent. And so one, hey, good news, because such an increase of people are being affected right now, that means the stigma of being laid off and unemployed is so much lower than it used to be that chances are it's actually affecting you in the workplace a lot less than you think it is. Another core piece of advice that I heard from David was, hey, don't take it personally. And I think back to, the couple times that I have been affected by layoffs. And I went back and I said, hey, what could I have done better? And in a lot of cases, there was actually nothing I could have done better. Like I was actually operating at an extremely high level. And then I went and I became what's called an outplacement consultant. And so I have worked with thousands of people that have been laid off all the way up to the vice president level. And what I learned was that sometimes the best people are laid off because they're more highly compensated. And, when the company's in a bad spot, sometimes you need to let go of the best people because that will free up the most salary when the company's really hurting. So you can be absolutely freaking amazing and still be laid off. And so that's the importance of not taking it personally. I do want to, challenge you and be a little skeptical, David, because I think it's hard for a lot of people to not personalize it and to just jump in and move on and start taking action immediately. So what advice would you give to people to overcome that and maybe less logical and more what actions can they take to overcome, I'm wallowing in it and I'm not sure I'm ready to get started?
Thank you for asking that, because there is an emotional side to business a lot of people just don't address. You've heard the saying, it's not personal, it's just business. No, all business is personal because people are emotional creatures. And I took a little time in between. I had some reflection time after I got laid off. I got upset about it, got mad, went through all the stages of grief, and that's going to be real and deal. But here's the action I'm suggesting you take. It's not, jump on and start submitting your resume everywhere. Start calling the people who know and trust you the most. The people that you worked with before where you had successes, right? They'll not only remind you of those high points in your career, which is a good little boost to the spirit, but those are the people, again, that shortcut to trust. They're going to be thinking about it. You just re-entered top of their mind. And now the next day or two, somebody asked them, hey, I'm looking for a product marketing manager. Oh, you know what? David Goad's available, right? It's you making your presence known. And when you reach out to them, you don't necessarily say, hey, I'm looking for a job. It's more like, let's talk and connect. What are you doing? Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I learned from this role I just left. I'm thinking I want to do this. What do you think? Just ask people what they think and listen and give them a chance to give you a little advice. I had real big ego early on. I thought I knew everything, and I learned to get humble really quick and say, hey, this isn't working. What should I do? So reach out to your network in that way, like, and offer some help in exchange for the help that you're asking back from them. Did I address that, Mike? Do you think that's in line with
You
the rest?
did. That was absolutely freaking beautiful. The concept, and it's one that even I forget, although I teach networking for a living, is that one of the best, easiest things that not only is going to gain you more momentum, and I'm just paraphrasing what you said, one of the things that's going to help you build confidence is reaching out to the people that already know and love you. So a lot of times, because we are taking things personally when we're laid off or we have a setback in business or whatever your career status that you might be struggling with right now, we have a tendency to feel embarrassed or what I would say falling into shame, or Brene Brown would say is falling into shame. And we're actually doing ourselves a disservice, and we're making it harder for us to build confidence when we start isolating and not reaching out to people that know us already and love us. And so, simple thing, and they don't all have to be people that work in our industry or whatever. Like, if you're in a rough place, start out with the family members and friend members, and friends that know and love you and support on you. And what you said was really brilliant, because they're going to be the ones that are going to tell you how awesome you are and the great stuff that you've done. And then you can do that with your recent coworkers as well. And it doesn't have to be your boss. It can be, hey, was there another equivalent to your boss? Or, were there some coworkers of yours that just really appreciated what you brought to the workplace? Call those people, whether they're still working there or not. And that's going to bring up the whole vibration and confidence level altogether. Is that pretty good stuff?
Love it.
Or is that pretty good
Yeah,
stuff?
awesome. You just built on what I said. And the old rule was start taking people to lunch. Well, the equivalent of that now is just start doing little Zoom meetings, right? And just connect that way. Get video into the picture, because there's so much more information available, and to help with that emotional part, you can see when someone's body language looks defeated. You can read it on their face. A little harder to tell in just a voice alone. And I've even had a personal policy that I set recently, Mike, where if somebody reaches out with that kind of email or LinkedIn message, say, hey, David, I'm looking, I need some help, whatever, I pick up the phone and call them as soon as I can. As soon as I get an opening, I call them back. I don't email back, I call them back. Hey, so glad to hear you're looking now, and you opportunity, and just give them a little boost and a charge, because I know what that feels like. We've all been there. And getting that one friend or a couple of friends to just remind you of your mountaintop moments, it's something that helps you overcome the anxiety and the internal stuff that's going on. I teach a lot of people about to overcome stage fright. One of the things as a speaking coach, you have people with all different levels of anxiety and wiring inside from their childhood about this fear of public speaking. And one of the things I always teach them is before you go on stage is to recall, relive, revisualize a mountaintop moment when you were just kicking it, right? You're on top of the world and you conquered something, and just, I even, on my show, the talk show at Cisco, we're back in the green room, and I can tell the nervous people, right, that were great engineers, but nervous on camera. And I just get them talking, hey, tell me, man, tell me what kind of successes have you guys had this year, right? Tell me about your team, right? And they start talking about themselves and their wins, and you can just see it come over their shoulders relax, go down, they're smiling, they're breathing again. And which, by the way, is another thing between stage and camera. And we'll segue now maybe to the camera part of this, because camera fright is 10 times worse than stage fright. That little red dot goes on, they say action, and you're like, people do two things. They either freak out or they get really boring.
So there were some more Goad nuggets in there that I don't want to I don't want to miss out on. So And again, so, the overall theme of today is building your confidence in your career. And so, David has broken it down into a couple different categories. We're primarily talking about people that have been laid off or affected by things, but I think it can apply to a lot of different situations, especially for this Goad nugget that you talked about. And that is the Goad nugget of, hey, when you're about to get on camera, and I'm going to amend that a little bit and say, hey, when you're about to get on camera, when you're about to get in the Zoom call, when you're about to meet that hot, sexy date, when you're about to meet that person in the future, hopefully in the future, and shake their hands, it's a getting on stage moment. And so, David, you had a quick little process, which we should probably bring you back just to talk about that one process. Man, like, I'm going to be bringing you back like every week.
I'm here, man.
I want to make sure people write these down before they step on stage. What's the process? I think it was a 3-step process.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Recall a mountaintop moment.
Mountaintop moment. Yeah, that's the part I wanted to hear you say again.
And it's reliving something that you did in the past where you were on top of the world, you had a big win, happy time in your life, and it puts you in a different state. If you've ever been to a Tony Robbins event, they talk a lot about the state that you're in. And there, of course, there's anxiety. Even to this day, I've been speaking for decades now. And before I go on stage or on camera for a big presentation, I get a little bit butterflies. Why? Because I care. I care about the audience. I care about them receiving what I have to give. I care about their reaction. Actually, it does make me feel good to get a reaction and all that stuff, kind of swirling around there before you start. And so it's good to just, get that some deep breathing, recall how good you really are before you step out in front of there. And the thing that's changed now, Mike, is, people had anxiety before to step into a conference room with a big wooden table and 4 people sitting around on a panel to interview you, right? That's just like, it's the Inquisition. I'm going to get questions pelted at me by 4 different people all at once. And that's like, well, it's even worse online. And I'll tell you why. Because people are missing information, because you don't know how you're doing. Even in a Zoom call, you've got the little video panels up there. You don't get that same sense that you have when you're in a room and I just know that guy's giving me the evil eye. I can see it out of the corner of my eye. Here, there's no corner of your eye. It's like you get the person in front of you and the one that's speaking one at a time. You're missing the ability to see them do this. It's that little kind of shift in their seat. You might miss that. Or the heavy sigh, or the eye roll, little micro gestures and things that poker players tune into to know whether somebody's lying or not. And here, so people are missing the physical space feedback. And therefore it's disturbing, and they freeze up even more. They don't know. And there's some tools. I actually will talk about this in a minute here, is in an online interview, what can you do to stand out, be more present, and come across as confident as possible? Because if you take the time to learn some of those tools, how to look your best and sound your best, prepare little success stories, they're going to be impressed with you. More impressed than the one they just talked to and the one they talked to after you. And that's what in job search, you're selling yourself and you're being compared. So how do you stand out even in this little box? And I don't know if you want to talk about that now, or if you had another question about where we were just at before.
Yeah, I have a couple things that I wanted to say, and then I'm going to switch gears and then bring us up and wrap this up into a bow. So one, the mountaintop moments, like, what's that is so key. That's something that I use in my own life before I go on camera. Sometimes, before I meet a client, in my personal life. And I just want to add that the mountaintop moment, because I know we have a lot of people that have imposter syndrome, and I'm an old recovery from imposter syndrome.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Worked really hard at it. Still occasionally comes back, but That mountaintop moment that you're thinking back to before you step on camera or go into that interview, it doesn't have to be a career or business moment. I think it's great if it is, but sometimes I use a moment where my romance was off the charts or whatever. The important thing is that it makes you feel good and confident and moves you into that positive state that David was talking about. So now I'm going to surprise David and switch gears on him, because in case people aren't able to stay to the end, there's still one more core component that we need to cover before we break today. But David, if people are interested in working with you on becoming a better speaker, improving their executive presence, or improving their communication or building their confidence, what's a way that they can get in touch with you and potentially work with you?
Well, thanks for asking. DavidGoadSpeaks.com.
DavidGoadSpeaks.com. That's easy.
If you're looking for coaching, go to the executive coaching page. And there's something right now that everybody seems to be asking for, which is, how can I be better on camera? The whole world went on camera overnight. And that's the majority of what I'm doing now, is helping people and teams to be more effective, not just with looking and sounding good, but what they say. So if they're a sales team, I'm helping them with being more persuasive. If they're doing, internal presentations, all hands meetings, it's how to be a more compelling and confident speaker on camera. And it's interesting. I was trying to figure out how to package this, and I used to charge by the hour, but now I charge one flat fee. Use me as much as you need in the next 3 weeks before that big video or that big presentation. So I call it Speech 911. It's usually people that are, I need help, I'm freaking out, help me get there with my story, my delivery, with everything. And that's predominantly what I'm doing now.
Awesome. And what are your social media handles in case they want to follow you?
I should be the #1 David Goad in Facebook and LinkedIn and possibly Twitter. I'm not sure. There's a few others that David Goad's out there. There's a coal miner in West Virginia. There's a sheriff in Florida. But I think I'm pretty much #1 if you look up David Goad.
Got it. So it's
absolutely.
David, not Dave. David Goad. Goad is spelled Goad. And you should be able to find him on most social media platforms, correct?
On YouTube, go to the David Goad Show link, and you'll find a playlist of little short modules. I like to give away a lot of what I know, and interviews like this, short interviews, and little 3 to 4 minute Goad nuggets, as you mentioned. So you can find that on the David Goad Speaks YouTube channel.
And that's what I love about you, is you really care about people, and you're doing your part to help people. And so I personally know there's a lot of great content on YouTube and your Facebook and whatnot. So thank you for that. So we have been building anticipation for wrapping up this last part into the row. So we covered the first 2 categories for people that are struggling right now with their confidence. Remind everyone of what the 3rd category is, and how would we go about overcoming that one?
Standing out in an online interview. And this is all part of, we're talking about being on camera, having more anxiety about that, people being self-conscious about their physical appearance, or not having that feedback with other people. There's lots of reasons for it, but you can overcome it. And my first challenge to you, to anybody watching now, look at it as a skill set that you can learn. I am not a natural. Let me repeat that. I'm not a natural. It took me 25 years to get to a point where I can look into a camera just like I'm doing right now and delivering to you as if you're another human being. And this is something you can learn. I've got the lighting set up and things, but there's inexpensive, cheap things you can do. And that's one of the workshops, and one of the things I do in individual coaching too, is just tune it up. Ask for advice from me or somebody else about lighting, sound, camera angle, and framing. Those are the 4 things to look into. Lighting means get some light on the front of your face so you can see people's eyes. The eyes are the windows to the soul. And if you're excited and your eyebrows go up, you want people to see that. Don't show up as a silhouette. I'm shocked at how people show up sometimes. With camera angle, just get it up here. Get your camera somewhere even with your eyes, so you're not looking down at your camera or looking up. If your audience can see your ceiling or your floor, your camera angle is not correct. And here's the reason for it, the psychological reason. Just like Mike, you and I are both framed up nice. I feel like I'm talking to you across the table at a Starbucks, right? Both of our eyes are kind of around the same level. Our heads are up here. We're not, showing up like this or like this or looking at the second monitor. You get people doing all kinds of things, but realize that your eye contact with that camera is your credibility. And you may see me looking into the camera a lot. And if you feel like I'm talking right to you, those are the moments when I'm looking to the camera. Now watch this. I'm going to look down at Mike. Now I'm going to look back at the camera. Looking down at Mike. You see how different that sight line is? And if you're distracted, looking away, looking at your notes, looking around the room, people are like, who is he talking to? But if in your core message, like the moment you say, I want this job, and you look straight into that little black hole directly and know there's a human being on the other side, they're going to be like, wow, he's talking just to me. And here's the beauty of it. In a recorded video, if you have that kind of eye interaction with the camera, you can have 100 people feel like you're talking just to them. That's not even something you can do in a room with the big wooden conference table, right? So you can play that camera to your advantage and make sure in all the most important parts of the interview, in the answers that you're giving or the wrap up or whatever it is, that you are looking at. It's okay to glance at your notes occasionally. Nobody stares, right, the whole time. They think you're like a Terminator robot. You're just, looking and not blinking. So you can look away, but that eye contact is critical. And then finally, how you're framed. Frame yourself up like a news anchor here. Make sure they can see your hands. A lot of people will gesture down below here, and it's like, what's going on? You see something fly through the screen every now and then. But give yourself a little bit of breathing room, and so that you can occasionally highlight a thought and say, I grew it from here to here. I was able to move the needle, right? I decided I was not going to do that anymore. Just a few intentional and deliberate gestures that you hold for a moment. It's just like holding eye contact. It makes the point sink in, it shows you're passionate, and it translates to the audience as credibility and passion and determination. And anybody who's going to hire you is going to love if you come across like somebody who gets things done, they mean what they say, and all of these things contribute to that in addition to your voice. So I'll pause there for a moment.
Awesome. That was phenomenal. So many Goad nuggets packed in there. So a lot of times, those of you that have been following me for a while, those of you that just found me recently, one of the core things, that contributes to stress and confidence being shaken is this sense of overwhelm. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed with any of the advice that was given today, my advice to you is that you just pick one or two of the things that you heard today. Pick one or two of the things that you heard today and implement those. That is going to do you so much more good for your confidence and making you feel better and getting you on camera than trying to worry about all the details and whatever. And then you can come back and watch this video again and over again. And I'm sure this is going to be on YouTube. And when you're ready to go deeper or you're struggling to implement any of the stuff, consider hiring, an incredible executive speaking coach like David Goad. And at davidgoadspeaks.com or David Goad on social media. Because really, as long as you're making progress, you're making progress. And your progress will be the single biggest thing that's going to help move your confidence through the roof. And so that's what I wanted to wrap up today. David, thank you so much for coming in. I do encourage you to not only, write down and take notes, but of what you learned today and implement something as soon as possible. Because if you don't implement something quickly, you start to forget it right away, even if you don't realize it. And if there's questions that we didn't cover, drop them in the comments, because we're to come back and look at those. And then we might do another video for you and get a lot more specific. So thank you so much for everyone for coming today. And thank you for David for for being here. Is there any last parting 30 seconds you would like to leave the audience with?
Absolutely. A little bonus tip here, because whether you hire a coach or not, you can learn every single day. And the other thing that online gives you is the ability to record your own presentations, very fast, cheap, and easy. So when you record a video of you performing a presentation, or if you can record an interview, send it to friends, other peers that you trust, or mentors, and ask them 2 questions. What did you love? And then what, if anything, distracted you? And I found those 2 questions will end up getting the best feedback, because distraction covers a lot of ground. It could be physical tics, things that you do, your voice, lots of things fall under that. And what did you love is important to ask first, because you want to keep those things that you're doing right and build on them. So that's all I got, Mike. I really enjoyed it today. I know you are an excellent resource, and you help people a lot in your coaching and consulting. So happy to keep in touch, and would love to come back another time if you want to dive deeper on any of this.
I would love to have you back. And that reminds me, if your confidence is specifically shaken in job search, or you just want to develop some more momentum, I do have a really incredible program that is launching next week. So your last day to sign up is actually Saturday. And that's my How to Land Any Job Offer Success Secrets program. It's 8 weeks of support from me at a very affordable cost. And you can find out about that at careersuccesssecrets.net. careersuccesssecrets.net. So thanks so much for being here, David. Like, you even completely like blew me away with that thing at the end. And you have so much knowledge and resources for people that like we haven't even untapped yet. So I'm really excited for them to get to learn more about you.
Awesome. And Mike knows his stuff, in case you didn't know that. He knows.
Thanks, David.
Love it, man. Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.